Hi, it's Paula from Paula Quilting. Welcome back to my channel. Today I will show you one of the projects I have been working on for quite a while. It took a while because what I had in mind when I was trying to make it wasn't coming. So I was trying to figure out the different ways of doing this project to make it as true to my vision as possible, and I think I finally arrived to kind of final way of doing it. Because there is going to be a little bit of manual work, yes, is the manual work involved. I normally don't do that. I like to do everything in the machine, but actually with this project it's better to do some parts of it by hand. So for that reason I'm going to go with the biggest possible block I would feel comfortable work with, in a way that it will look good and you will have enough of those elements when put together. So what we need is a 12.5-inch piece of fabric as a background fabric. You can go with the smaller, obviously you can customize this block to the size you like. I just, like I said, I don't make too many of those blocks because they are a little bit more time consuming than my usual blocks, but you can obviously scale it up or down, or even go with rectangles if that's what fits your own design. So I've got 12.5-inch square, and this square of fabric is it's a fabric that doesn't sit through. So that's the only conditions for this kind of project, that the fabric you will choose, when you put another fabric under, you don't want to see through the seam. Sometimes fabric kind of got a little bit of see-throughness through it. The seams are visible more than anything else, and if it was just straight stitch you would be working with, I wouldn't have a problem with that. That's just normal quilting. But for this particular project, just go with the background fabric that doesn't see through. What we will also need is 8.5 inches of a batting. That is going to be for our trapunto part of the project. As you can see, I kind of patch up some leftover scraps of batting. For the trapunto technique you would normally use something with higher loft. The more loft you have in your backing, it will be more sticking out of the quilt when you put it all together and start quilting. I don't want that to stick that much. I just want a little bit of kind of fullness in that spot part. So I'm just using what I normally use, which is fleece. It's a low pile fleece. If you want more lift, you may use that kind of more fluffy one, or add maybe 2 layers or even 3 layers. It's just to bring that loft up. I would recommend do some testing to see what you like the best, or how much thickness you like in your trapunto project. What we'll also need is a piece of fabric we'll be making splats from. I'm using a crumb, as you can see, red crumb. I also have got the blue crumb. So I'm going with 2 colors, red and blue, but obviously again you can use your own colors, you can mix them up, have a colorful inside, whatever you've got there. Also you can use just plain fabric, one color fabric. It's up to you what you will use for that, but I like to go with the crumb because I think it will add a little bit of extra oomph. So I've got this kind of dirty pink and blue color background. So for the dirty pink I will go with the blue crumb, and for that blue color background I will go with red, so it gives me a little bit of contrast. So what I want to do first is obviously do a little bit of quilting here, so those 2 layers are stick together. Now in this point you would like to possibly think about how you will quilt that quilt later. Would you like to go with quilting all over this part included, or you would like to keep that part separate and just quilt all around it? If you go with quilting separate and not quilting this part anymore, just quilt a little bit more here at this stage. If you think you will be quilting with that part later, then you can quilt less, just literally so it holds in one place. You can also think about maybe using a thread which will blend with this spot if you're going to be quilting later all over it again, with maybe another color which will match the rest of the quilt. Just so literally you just want to keep the layers together. You could also just baste them too and remove basting stitches when you're ready. So what I will do first, I will just quilt this piece first quickly. Nothing complicated. I like to just use straight lines here. You know, just remember, the more you quilt it, the loft will also go down. So because we're using the trapunto technique to lift up the kind of that piece of the project, so you don't want to go over it too much. So I've quilted my piece. Nothing much, just few simple lines with straight stitch. This crumb was 8.5 inches, so I'll just trim it quickly. It doesn't have to be exact trim to the sizes. I just want to quickly trim that shape, more or less, so I know how much space I've got for my splat. Because we don't want to go beyond this size. So whatever size you go with, you want to do the same thing. Just trim it all around. I will use this shape to kind of narrow down where we're gonna go with our splat on the background fabric. Here we go. So now I'll take my background, and what you will need is something to mark on your fabric that you can remove later. So you can either use some of those pens which you can remove with water or with the heat. You can use a chalk. You can use a dry soap. My mom, when I was young and we were sewing clothes, we always used dry soap for marking on the fabric. So whatever you've got there, whatever you will be able to remove from that fabric later. And I will use one of those pens you can remove with heat, because that's what I've got. So this shape you want to put where you will go with your splat. Now it doesn't have to be in the middle, it can be somewhere on the side. You just remember you want to leave yourself, you know, 1/4 inch for your later for your seam when you're sewing it together. And you probably don't want to start that splat just by the edge either. So I think here will be fine. As you can see, it's not on the in the center, but more or less it gives me that nice edge there. So I will just trace that shape. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. We're just narrowing down where we want to put our splat later. And it doesn't have to be, you know, those lines don't even have to go all around exactly either, just more or less to mark the spot. So I can remove this one now, and I will draw my splat. I suggest you practice a little bit on the paper first, just to see how you kind of get going with tracing. You could also make yourself a template from the piece of paper. That probably is good. You know, if you want to have the same shape on more than one, then you can reuse that pattern, or just kind of work with your hand. When you kind of drawing your splat, be sure not to get close again to this edge, because that's where our piece is finishing. You want to at least be possibly more than 1/2 inch, I would say. So if you like, you can draw another line here just to give yourself that area of where you can come out with the lines. About 3/4 of an inch from that line will be fine. I'm not measuring anything, I just kind of eyeball it, but you can obviously use the ruler to mark your spots as well, whatever feels comfortable. And now I will draw. Just start somewhere maybe from here, and I will just draw a splat which is irregular size. What you don't want to do is that splat to have a kind of like lots of small bubbles here. It's going to be quite difficult later to work with. You want your curves to be quite gentle and have at least a little bit of that kind of straight line there, like this is straight, this is straight, this is straight, so it doesn't come off one next to another one straight away. So with those kind of pens, if you kind of come off and you say, okay, I don't like one of the angles or something, you can always use a heat, you know, this is heat erasing one, you can use the iron to remove it and start again. So just kind of shape it until you're happy with the shape and you are ready for the next step, which will be cutting out this shape. But again, we want to leave at least somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 inch from that edge you want to cut. So actually you could use a pen, again draw another one of those shapes in the middle, and that will be our cutting out line. You don't have to, you can just go in and do it without kind of tracing. That's how I was doing it when I was working on this project. But if it helps, there's no problem of kind of drawing another line. As you can see, I don't measure anything. I want to be more than a quarter, maybe slightly less than a half, but half is fine as well. So just trace that line. Here we go. So just go through all of those lines. I've got that initial line which is 8 inches, 8.5 inches, size of my crumb. Then I drew another line which is about at least 3/4 inches below that line. That's the area where I can start working my splat. Then I drew my splat, and then I drew another splat inside of that first one with the distance about between 1/4 and 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I will now just go in with the scissors and I will cut that shape out of the fabric. So first I will just cut close to that line and then just go in and cut all around it. So now if I wanted to kind of make all my splats more or less the same, I could use what I've cut out from the first one also as a kind of cutting out template, but they don't have to be the same. They can be all different on different part of the project, I think, which makes it more fun. Again, it doesn't have to be exactly on those lines, just more or less as close as possible is fine. It is, you know, after all, a splat. Splats are not even or perfect, so it's okay. Okay, so that's my splat cutted out. Now what I want to do is go around and start notching my fabric. So it's a lot of curves in here, so if I want to now make those seam allowances nice and, you know, rounded rather than square-ish, you want to go around and notch it all around that shape. So you know where you need to finish, because we've got that first line. So up to there, you need to notch that fabric. And you just need to go around and do it on all of the splat. If you have a pieces where it's quite straight, then you don't have to notch that much there. Or you just go in between the straight pieces. I don't have anything straight here, so I won't be able to use that. But if you do, then obviously you can notch there less, but here I'm just notching really possibly about 1/4 inch distance between one notch and another. So this is what I was saying, there's going to be a little bit of manual work, well, little, quite a lot considering all my other blocks. Manual work to make sure that when we will work with this shape later, it's going to be nice and rounded rather than square. So I will speed up here and I will show you when I finish notching here. I will go to the next step. Okay, I finished all my notches all around, as you can see. Now if your fabric's got right and wrong side, this would have been your right side, you would want to turn your work around and be on your left side or wrong side. My fabric has, you know, no difference really. I'm not fussed about which way I'm going, so I will just leave it here to show you how I'm working on those lines. So what you will need for the second part is something to kind of help you to move fabric down. You could use a finger, but I'm finding that I'm getting my finger dirty with a second thing you will need, which is a glue stick. And I'm just using simple school glue, which is washable. Nothing complicated, you know, for £1 from the shop. So what I want to do is glue below that line, or where the line is between my notches and the fabric. Don't glue too much in one go, because that glue tends to dry fairly quickly, unless yours doesn't, so by all means. And I'm just using my pin to move that fabric down up to where the notches are, because my notches were up to that line of the splat. And I'm just going down. On certain curves you might need to reapply the glue on top of that fabric you kind of put down already, because it covers all the glue which was below it. And I'm going down. Every few, have a look around on the other side if you are happy with the curve, how it's progressing. So because I'm using the pin, I'm keeping that work quite clean. I was finding that if I was using finger, the finger would kind of dip in that glue somewhere in between. Then I would have a glue on top of the fabric where I didn't want it, and it just was a little bit messy. So the pin is quite helpful here. And again, just a little bit of glue, and I'm carrying on. It's a washable glue, so I don't worry about it. And I'm just going with those notches to keep them down, and I will work to finish all around that way, just slowly. I was really working, trying to make the project a little bit quicker, or with using more machine than hand, and I will show you how it looks. I wasn't happy with it, but I've got one version done a little bit different, so I will show you, and maybe that's something you'll be happy with and you can use that one as well. I just wanted something a little bit more polished, I think, little bit more clean, but you will see and make your own decision. So I'm just going around, and I'm using this pin, here you go, to fall down between notches, how I've done those notches before. So let me just put a few more down, and I will show you how it looks on the other side. Here you go. Those notches are not even the same length, and that's fine as well. That's why I was saying at the beginning, you want to have a fabric which doesn't kind of see through, that you don't see that fabric which is bent under. So this is how that curve progressing, which I'm happy with. So like I said, every few times just turn it around, see if you are happy. If there's something you need to adjust, you can go back and adjust it. And I will carry on with that all around, and then we are going to be ready for the next step. So this is how it looks. I finished my notches, gluing to the wrong side. I will turn it around, and this is what my splat looks like. I'm happy with kind of those curves here. Don't worry, they look slightly squarish in some points, because we are still going to be making more manual work here, so we'll be able to still readjust it slightly. But if there's something really wrong, just do it here before you start doing the next step. So I'm just taking my basted or quilted slightly piece of the crumb, and now I'm gonna put my splat on top of it, and I want to align it, so I've got that, when we draw a line, that it's gonna be a little bit about the minimum distance will be at least 3/4 of an inch from the edge of my piece here, quilted piece. So that's how I want to align it, because the next work will be to stitch baste it all around. So I'll just use a stitch base to go all around this piece here, in about 1/2 inch away from my edge of my splat. Basting means you will lengthen the stitch length to about 3 or even 4, because later we'll be removing that thread, but for now we need to hold our splat to the fabric when we'll be working on it. So let me quickly do that. You'd have to be very precise here. It's literally just to hold this piece in place for you. So I'm not even trying to be like rounded as the kind of curves of my splat are going. Just literally more or less, and 1/2 inch away from the edge. We will need that line for 2 reasons. One, it's holding our piece in place, but 2, we will need to remove the excess of the batting, so the trapunto effect is only under our splat, not everywhere else, or as close as possible to just the splat. Could have gone with the longer stitch. I only went with 3.5 here. You can go with 4, 4.5. Like I said, we'll be removing that line later, and the longer the stitch, the easier it's going to be. But that's fine. I'll just leave it for now as is. Okay, so this is how it looks at the moment. So if you have ever done a needle turn applique, or you have stitched your binding by hand. That's exactly the skill we will need now, because we want to now stitch by hand this edge here to the back. The only difference is that we don't worry about how it looks at the back, because this is going to be hidden in the quilt. So if you go with your needle, you know, through all the layers, that's absolutely fine, no problem at all. What color of the thread to choose is, you either want to choose something what is kind of matching your top fabric or back, depending on your style. If you have done either of those two sewing techniques I've mentioned before, you kind of see how your stitching goes, whether you more the person who stitches comes on top or more at the bottom. So that's how you want to choose your thread. I will go with the bottom thread. I've got red thread here already, so I'll go with the bottom, and you just want to stitch that by hand. So that's the second piece of manual work here, but I think it's worth the effort. So let's get the needle going. I will try to close up here as much as I can, so you can see how I'm doing, though I'm going to be away from that work because of how I'm recording, so it's not going to be very comfortable to do, but I will try to show you a few stitches here. I'm not taking too much of the thread. My thread is probably linked to the elbow, otherwise it starts kind of twisting, and that's not something you want to work with. So let's just get a close-up now. Okay, so I can go at the back and start really anywhere, because like I said, what is at the back nobody will ever see, and I'm just coming as close as I can to that edge of the blue fabric here with my needle. And then I will go in with my needle in between the back fabric and that notch I've done, so I want to be inside in those layers there. It's exactly how would you do your binding, and then you can go inside of the your crumb and the batting and do the same thing, and it's probably like an 1/8 of an inch distance I'm doing the stitches. And again, I'm going in between those layers here. I want to be on that fold where that fabric I folded between the notch and the top of the layer. And again, it's about an 1/8. And I will go all around that splat to do that kind of running stitch. You could, if you want, add some maybe hand stitching here, some kind of sashiko stitches here around. You can kind of embellish that that thing. I'll show you quickly how I was trying to do it on machine and I didn't like. So I did the other bit exactly the same way, but then I've kind of stitched it very close on the machine here. I didn't like it. I thought maybe if I add another stitch it will come better, but I didn't like it either. So that's why I decided, actually probably in case of this block, the handwork is gonna work better. Okay, so I will finish my block, like I said, with that running stitch, and I will show you what the next step is, so we have this block ready for the rest of the quilt. And this is the finished splat with by hand. I don't have a tutorial for needle turn applique because I normally don't do applique, but I do have a tutorial how to do binding by hand, so that's exactly the same way I've done it here, and I will link it in the description below if you haven't tried it before. So the last thing that is left to do is to trim that batting, because we want to leave it as close as possible to that splat itself, and that's why how I'm using that basting line again here. So I'm just cutting as close as I can, and make sure you don't cut your fabric, and I'm just cutting as close as I can to that basting stitch here, leaving that this is the line of the basting, and that's how we'll cut it off. And then when I finish, I will just have that batting just up to that line, and I'm okay with that. You could possibly kind of baste it a bit closer and then cut it closer as well, but I think if you just leave at that, it will be fine. So I will make now a few more of those splats. They will vary in the kind of sizes, shapes and location. Some maybe in the more middle, some somewhere on the side. And then I will pop them on design board, and so we can have a look how they look together. Before I show you my finished project, just a quick reminder where you can find me and how you can support my work. You can subscribe to my website to be notified when new tutorials, products or patterns are released. You can find me on my Facebook page, Pola Photo, or you can join my group page, Pola Quilting with Friends, where we all share work made inspired by my tutorials and answer any questions you may have. There is Instagram account called Pola Quilting, and if you like to share something you made based on my tutorials, please tag me using hashtag Pola Quilting with Friends. To support my work, please like, comment and share when you see my posts or tutorials. Let your quilting friends know about this channel and invite them to the group and subscribe to my channel. If you like to contribute extra, you can use super thanks on YouTube or buying me virtual tea, coffee or lunch available on my page. All links are in the description below. I would like to thank you all for all the support so far and letting me grow in what I do. Just to let you know, there is now another incentive to join my newsletter. So back in November, as you remember, I was one of the presenters on the Scrappy Summit, which was a great success. A lot of people happy with joining us. So I decided to make my own presentation available to those who join my newsletter. So once you confirm your subscription, you will receive a document with a link to my presentation. Be sure to save that document for future reference. And if you already joined my newsletter, a link to the presentation will be included in the next few newsletters, so you will have access to it as well. So now back to my blocks. Here they are, how they look individually. They're all different in shape and size. I only had blue and red crumbs ready for this project, but any color combo will look great. If you never tried crumbs, I will add link in the description for tutorial how to make them. But obviously you can make those splats not only from the crumbs, but you know, maybe some test blocks you made will look nice, some nice fabric. Something special you want to show off will look great in that scenario. So I have come up with a few options for the layout. You can see them now, so please let me know in the comments which one was your favorite and if you think you will try make one. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will be ever so grateful if you subscribe if you haven't done so, and come back for the next tutorial or maybe show and tell. Happy sewing everyone! Thank you for watching. I hope you will share this tutorial, subscribe if you haven't done so. Happy sewing and see you next time.